The great thing about Psalms is that they communicate truths which philosophy can never fully investigate in a style in which poetry can never equal. Psalms will often answer questions for us, like two of them that I'll have for you today. And how you answer these will dictate how you see everything in life. No matter who you are and where you're at in life, or even your religious sphere in which you believe, these two questions will impact everything about you. The first question is, who is God? And the second question is, in light of who God is, who are you? Is there a relationship? Is there a connection? One psalm that answers this question for us is Psalm 8. Let me read it for you here. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. You have set your glory above the heavens. Out of the mouth of babies and infants you have established strength because of your foes, to still the enemy and the avenger. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars which you have set in place, what is man that you are mindful of him, and the son of man that you care for him? Yet you have made him a little lower than the heavenly beings and crowned him with glory and honor. You have given him dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen and also beasts of the field, the birds of the heavens and the fish of the sea, whatever passes along the paths of the seas. O Lord, our Lord, how majestic is your name in all the earth. And so the psalm starts teaching us about who God is, and there's a repetitive nature of how it starts and how it ends, and it tells us something. We don't know the experiences in which that David caused him to write this psalm, but it's communicating something about who God is. It says, O Lord, our Lord. You see, it starts with recognizing God's name. When you see the capital L-O-R-D, it's God's name of Yahweh. And then it moves on to God's role of him being our Lord. And it's not a cold, abstract, distant God, but a God with a deep and personal and intimate relationship with his creation. You see, God is not distant. It's amazing that he could say it's our Lord, that there's this possessive sense that we can know and have relationship with. And David even tells us that this God, he's superior to everything else throughout the earth, that the entire world is a stage for his glory. What's interesting, it says in verse 3 that the creation is simply a work of God's fingers. You see, David didn't have the Discovery Channel like we do, but he was able to discern who this God was who reigned over all things by simply looking at it. For us, with scientific advances, we've learned much about this creation and what it speaks to about God. For example, think, the Milky Way is just one of 100 billion galaxies that we can see. If the distance between the sun and our Earth is 93 million miles, and if it was represented by the thickness of one sheet of paper, you would need a stack of paper 71 feet high to represent the distance between the Earth and the nearest star. But to represent the distance between Earth and the edge of the Milky Way galaxy, you would need a stack of paper 310 miles high. That would be a short stack compared to the 30 million mile high stack of paper that you would need to represent the distance from the Earth to the edge of the known universe. If the sun were hollowed out, 1,300,000 Earths could fit inside of it. But the sun is small compared to the star Antares, also known as the red star. If Antares were hollow, it could hold 64 million suns. However, this is nothing compared to the star Hercules, which if it were hollowed, could hold 100 million Antares. Yet that star, Epsilon, dwarfs Antares, for if it were hollow, it could hold 3 million Hercules. You confused yet? As am I. The amount of power needed to put such massive bodies in motion would be incalculable. Yet what David says here is that it was mere finger play for God. So he's powerful, but it also says that he's an artist. Some would argue that the world was created by a battle, or by evolution, or by accident. But what this psalm argues is that God made the world as an artist. He made it with his fingers, for delight of doing it. You see, great art shows you the inner being of the artist. Everything about their creation shows you about who this artist is. So everything about this world should be telling us about who God is. What was the work that required God's arms rather than merely his fingers? Well, it was the work that he did when his arms were pinned to the cross as he bore for the sins of mankind, for you and me. In other words, the work of creation was kids' play in comparison to the work of redemption. So we've learned what this psalm teaches us about God, but what does it teach us about us? It shows us that man is a flea, a temporary speck on the canvas of history. If you visit a beach or a mountain range, you will have this quickly confirmed for you. If you stand by the Pacific Ocean and you hear it raging and you see the waves crashing. If you stand at the peak of a mountaintop. If you evaluate the sheer vastness of the Grand Canyon. If you measure yourself against the height of the evergreen trees that line our hills, we feel small. Yet this psalm says something astonishing about humans. He's mindful of us. He sees us as stewards of his creation. You see, in verses 3-8, for instance, God speaks of God's sovereign choice to give human beings a place of his creation and his delegating rule over all creatures of humanity. This psalm teaches us that we are the recipients of the highest glory of any creative thing. You see, this will help us develop a healthy sense of self by first looking to God, not looking deep within ourselves first. You see, we can't gain value from staring at the mirror and telling ourselves that we're awesome, much like the old school Saturday Night Live sketch with Stuart Smalley of practicing daily affirmations. You see, many of us experience a low self-esteem because we've lost the basis for all human value, God's glory. Because modern teaching has lowered man to an animal and has rejected the image of God, the world is in chaos. It's no wonder that we have so much civil unrest, so much brutality. We have dethroned God and debased humanity. You see, God's glory is the source of your glory. What's amazing about this passage in this psalm, it teaches that it doesn't matter what you've done or what has happened to you. You are a person of great value because the God of glory has given glory to you. It's not because of the size of dress or shirt size that you wear and fit into. It's not because you were an honor student or your child is the star student at school. It's not based upon how much money you made last year, but because God himself has given you his glory. It's astonishing that the God who is great enough to have made the heavens can take notice of mere man because he goes beyond taking notice. He's mindful of them and he cares for them. God's greatness does not mean remoteness, but rather an eye for detail, no matter how small. You see, this psalm presents us with a complexity because man is complex. As Blaise Pascal said, the supreme paradox of all creation is man. We are at the same time the pinnacle creature of highest grandeur, as well as one that brings the most grief to God with our sin. We alone in creation experience guilt because we know we are never as good as we should be. So there's this paradox there. John Calvin taught that we cannot really understand the nature of God without understanding the nature of his image bearers and vice versa. The more accurate view we have of ourselves and the way in which we sin and the way our sin affects us, the more we will know and understand God's glory. The more we know God's glory, the more we understand the depth of our sin and our finiteness. So today may be a day that we take some time to consider just this as we reflect upon Psalm 8.